Hi, this is Lewis Perkins back for another episode of our podcast on climate conversations with Lewis and friends. And for those of you who've been following this season, we have been talking about some of the amazing programs and solutions that we are identifying through the Climate Solutions portfolio as part of our work to deploy funding from the Fashion Climate Fund to grow the army of partners, the coalition of the willing in decarbonizing the fashion industry's supply chain. And with that, I'm excited to reach out to our latest friend and also one of my colleagues at the Apparel Impact Institute, Dan Xavier, who leads our technology at AII. Dan, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Lewis.
Yeah. So, Dan, we're going to spend the next few minutes talking about the platform, the Climate Solutions Portfolio's platform that's being built as a technology framework and tool. And I have a bunch of questions for you about it. Obviously, some of them I know because I get to be part of the strategy of this. But some of them I really, want to hear from you and your thoughts on not only, the importance of this tool and this work, but also where we can go with it. But first of all, I kind of want to know who you are. And for our audience of listeners, tell us a little bit about you.
I've worked in software for quite a long time now, but mostly across healthcare and government regulated industries. And then with a more recent stint, starting my own startup in the e-commerce space. So definitely have been very deep in the trenches with agile development and software and the overall competitive space when it comes to consumer technology. So coming over to the fashion and apparel industry and also working for a company that's more nonprofit has really just been something brand new for me.
I think that what's great about your background and your work is that you bring to this the fresh perspective of how technology can be utilized to accelerate. And that's what we're really trying to do, right? At AII, we're identifying solutions, we're putting resources, funding, capital, more human resources and capital to them. And then we're trying to get them to scale. And there's a lot that is challenging about that, given that this is a global landscape of producers, suppliers, brand retailers, investors. And so, your experience and building these kinds of tools and also helping us think through the potential, I think is great. With that being said, okay, what is the Climate Solutions Portfolio platform? What is this thing that you've been tasked by AII and its funders and partners, because we've got a group of users that are already identified, right? So tell us what this is.
It's always the more challenging question to answer, which people probably wonder why. It should be pretty straightforward, but I think in our situation, what we've developed is very unique. So it requires a little more of a storytelling to really describe it. But I think in its simplest form, the CSP platform, it's the first software product developed by AII, and we officially released it as of September of this year. So it was a big effort from a lot of us to get that over the finish line, and we're excited to have that live as of a couple of months ago. The best way to think of it is as a digital gateway into the Climate Solutions portfolio. So it's focused heavily around allowing brands to discover projects with proven impact in the climate space, and then to be able to evaluate those projects to determine if they're an appropriate fit, and then to be able to then measure the impact of those projects across their supply chain.
Launching this in September, when did you start working on this?
I started, actually it'll be 1 year next week. So actually maybe this week. Yeah.
All right.
Sometime in November.
Good. And so, to get a product out to market in under a year is always a big thing. You used a phrase earlier that I got to know when I was running Cradle to Cradle, and we were doing some work with the workshop, who agile development. That is kind of the preferred way to build these days. And tell us kind of what is agile development versus what could it be otherwise, or what it used to be?
Agile development is a development framework for software, and it's really picked up over the past 15 years because it's all about being iterative and all about adapting to what's happening Whereas if you think of how companies operated, 20 years ago, it was, here's this big plan, here's all this money behind it. It's going to take 1 year to do. And then over the course of that year, the market changes, your customers' needs changes. And you get to that point of building it, and then it's already outdated. And it just becomes a really challenging struggle with resources. So Agile has taken off, especially in the consumer space with software, very rapidly, because it allows you to pivot. And as you learn, you develop and evolve. So at the end of the day, you're constantly building something that is really more in line with what your users want, rather than just kind of huddled in a room and a group of people trying to make decisions on a solution that they think is what everyone wants. So Agile is just such a great opportunity. And with what we're doing here at AII, we're blending Agile with other frameworks, because I think what's so important with it is that not every company can adapt every single aspect of Agile. So it's equally as important as developing your software to make sure you adhere and adapt to the culture and the overall way that everyone works within your company itself, which is going to continue to support being able to pivot and be more agile in nature.
It marries well with design thinking of like iteration and fail fast. And like,
That's right.
You don't like a no isn't the end of the road or a stop, or what's perceived as a failure isn't necessarily a failure. It's that opportunity to go back to the chalkboard and
Right.
to get the right partners in the room and to reiterate some of the benefits that I've had by doing a lot of this climate related and environmental work in close proximity to Silicon Valley with funders and investors coming from Silicon Valley, is to shape our nonprofit and the one that I ran before with this way of thinking that is a lot more, aligned towards systems change thinking with design thinking principles and agile development. Tell us about the Climate Solutions portfolio, how it came to be. And I assume if you're in this development phase, you've had partners that have been developing with you in an agile workspace zone or whatever. So tell me a little bit about how this thing has been building.
It's quite a story, but I think like many, it needs to be, because the software formed, like most do, out of a need to fix a problem. And in this case, the fashion and apparel industry was facing three in particular. And these were also three problems that were being voiced by our brand and retail partners. The first one was, what programs actually exist? So stakeholders have been struggling to find science-based programs that support their carbon reduction goals in its simplest form. The second problem has been around, okay, how do I find the programs, but then how do I know which ones are credible and verifiable? And the dispersed program information across the industry really just creates a lot of confusion about the structure and the efficacy of the programs themselves. So it kind of becomes just very challenging for partners and stakeholders to actually know what is real and what's not, to actually follow through with and select a program to implement. And then where do I prioritize is number three, in the sense that everything is a priority, right? And in the realm of sustainability, it's everything needs to be fixed yesterday. So how do you isolate those problems that everyone should be focused on together and clearly identify where they are along the supply chain, so that you're focusing on one thing at a time? Otherwise, you're doing 100% of work across 10 things versus just do 80-20, and you're going to get a lot more traction that way. So that was the start of everything in regards to the idea of a platform, but that was just identifying the problems. So it really acted as our motivation. Then it was this question of, how do we fix it? We know the problems are, but that's not really going to solve anything. So technology, specifically software in this case, became a topic of discussion. And through a lot of collaboration sessions, again, with our brand and retail partners, which was key, led to the genesis of the CSP platform. And that's essentially, how we got there. Seems like quite a leap to go from identifying problems and say, let's build some software. And I think that we did talk quite a lot about, why do we do it ourselves? Isn't there something maybe already out in the market? And this was absolutely a challenging decision because software development shouldn't be taken lightly. But the fact of the matter was there were already plenty of carbon accounting tools, reporting and analytics tools, data aggregator tools, things that were out there as solutions, and yet clearly no one was delivering what we needed or solving the problems that I had mentioned before. So we realized that we needed to actually take that step further and really approach software from that agile perspective and decide to build it ourselves because we know that we can potentially move the needle more and get to solving those problems a lot faster.
And I really appreciated the approach that you and the rest of the team took when exploring, should we build, should we partner, should we look at what's currently out there? And I think the desire to always ensure that who the users were also able to leverage that data into existing tools that may already be using. And I think the obvious one that comes up in this industry is the Higg Index and the work that Worldly has done and, building that out, well, really over the last, decade plus under the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. And I know that, it is the intent and that the impact data that would be captured or any of the content being captured around the work that AI is doing then can flow into tools like that, right? And it's always been top of mind to ensure we're not duplicating anything that is currently being done. We're adding the AI's additive data collection lens to it. That's maybe my words, not yours, but we're really looking at how can what we do at AI be a subset of information that then is available or ready to be distributed in the right way that the users of that tool need it, and that we remain agnostic in some ways to what that could be. We want to be able to design for what is most necessary from our users' perspective. Does that sound accurate, or am I kind of leaning too much into something? Yeah,
it's exactly right. It's not to knock what anyone has done in the industry and just some of the platforms that are out there today. They've done incredible work. It's just that we're a little different. We don't have private equity firms that require us to have monthly retention rates and sell directly to consumers. And that really changes your direction and what you develop and what you build. So naturally, those companies are going to have to focus more in that realm and may not tackle the features that we need or that our suppliers need or that our brand and retail partners need. So it's more along the lines of how could we build a foundation for ourselves from a software perspective, but then still keep that door open where we can integrate with these other platforms that are out there and collaboratively and as a unified approach, tackle the larger problems that the industry have around reduction of carbon emissions and many other sustainable goals.
So knowing that, then phase one, or as we were calling it, the beta, went into development. Tell us a little bit about what it is that just got launched.
So the main features of the platform really revolve around three key elements. So it's around discovery, evaluation, and measurement. First, we developed a solution registry where users can see a full list of programs available in the climate solution portfolio. Again, think of it as this digital gateway to the portfolio itself. And they're able to get a snapshot of all relevant information so they can assess and get an idea of what they might be interested in. Because if you can imagine a future state, you have 1,000 programs that are available, and no one has enough time to go into detail for each of these 1,000 programs and identify, is this one credible? Is this one verifiable? You need a full-time person to do that, and would they still get it accomplished in time? So we wanted to create this experience where all of that was available, and you're able to dissect that information and basically personalize what you're trying to find so that you can quickly get to things of interest. And that was really important for us, again, thinking about this user experience throughout the whole process. Secondly, each program has a spotlight page on the platform itself. And this is where, at this stage, maybe you found something that you're interested in and you decide, okay, let me dive a little deeper. And that's where we're actually delivering a lot of valuable information around tier focus, maturity level, regional availability, actual impact metrics, financial metrics, and any supporting resources like case studies. Because you can imagine the frustration again, you go and you finally find a program that you're interested, only to find out that they are not available in a region where you have manufacturing occurring. So we want to make sure that all this information is front and center to make it a very seamless approach, and for you to quickly gather whether or not the program you're interested in is relevant and appropriate for what you're looking for, to then maybe take it to that next step of reaching out and actually taking it more seriously. Finally is analytics. So as I said, discovery and evaluation were the first two, and now the final one is around really measuring the impact, measuring the emissions. So we've created an analytics dashboard where brands who have funded programs through the Climate Solutions portfolio can easily see emission savings metrics. So everything from greenhouse gas emissions, energy, water, as well as key financial metrics, such as investment cost per ton of CO2 and much more. You found everything, you evaluated something that you really want as a program, but tying it all back together is to really measure what that impact has been since you've implemented. And that's just so important for everyone to take back to their home offices to really emphasize this is the change that we're making. And that was very important for us to kind of close the loop across those three elements of the platform.
When we talk about, the grant making that we'd be doing to the Climate Solutions portfolio, and even aligning that to, existing programs like Clean by Design and carbon tech assessments, it was always like, the funding that's being pulled by the industry and climate philanthropy is really intended to follow the carbon, right? So you need to be able to demonstrate, this is not a return on investment with a percentage rate of return like in a traditional portfolio of investments. But I always thought like this is like a investment portfolio approach, but instead you're investing in decarbonization strategies and dollar in, unit of carbon out, following the carbon and the cost of carbon against how much carbon you get out is really the best way that brand suppliers can make decisions around which countries, regions, and suppliers they may nominate. But also ultimately, as we start to bridge this to the conversation of how the supplier uses a tool like this, which I want to get to in a little bit, then how are we giving them those resources to make the informed investment decisions for the highest yield of carbon, but also tracking water, other KPIs that our programs may deliver upon besides just CO2 emission reduction, right? Energy use, water savings, and beyond as we get, more sophisticated solutions that are addressing potentially social and labor, issues in addition to biodiversity, land use, all these things that are impacted by climate.
And Louis, just to add a point to that, I think there's also, we're not trying to build an extremely robust business intelligence tool and be this data aggregator, but not everyone looks at data the same way. So it was essential for us to also add features to the platform that allowed our users to look at data in a different way. So if they wanted to see things by region, by type of program, by facility level, by tier, then that was very important because everyone has their own flavor in which they want to see things. And if we're constantly just showing them one way, then it's not really allowing them to do much with that data, because the minute you have to take it from the platform and do it yourself, it kind of defeats the purpose. So there's this common theme that's strung throughout the entire development of this software, where we really want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the users and enabling them to be successful in their jobs, rather than just another piece of software that they have to access just to collect data, but it's actually adding more work for them to do.
So question for you, is this, as you were discussing, the beta launch, is this to build for projects today forward that are happening in the supply chain, or was there some discussion around uploading historical? Because there's obviously been a lot of work done through programs like Clean by Design and things in the past. Would that be, as you're thinking about querying information to help make decisions, I'm just curious to know where some of that thinking might be.
The biggest thing with data is trying to start small and start slow in a sense, so that we don't bite off more than we can chew. So we've started with everything around Clean by Design and our recent grantees. We've definitely talked about incorporating more historical data and really ingesting that, because in a possible future world, how incredible would it be is if stakeholders could actually upload their data and we could analyze it and provide recommendations, right? I mean, that's the world that we've approached now with tech, and even as you see with artificial intelligence, it's about tell me what I need to be looking at versus let me go and dive super deep into this data for the next 3 months and try to assess what I think is right. And naturally, every stakeholder is the subject matter expert, but that's where I think we start to open up the doors more to, okay, the more data we have, the better we can analyze. But we first want to make sure that we can build, whether it's algorithms or trend analysis or just features that allow us to, off of the data we do have, that is, again, quality, incredible, verifiable, we can provide value there. And then from there, we can start to scale and open up the door to more.
Yeah, there's so many ways in which this tool can be continued to add more value. I know it's been a little bit of like, let's scope what's most meaningful for today as we build out a strategy. But let me ask you, what do you think as you're looking at, work you've done in the past, but also just what's out there right now in this space, in this sector? What do you think makes this particular CSP platform unique or special?
Realistically, before we even began thinking about what the platform would look like or deliver, it became abundantly clear that there was a software fatigue happening, and that there were, again, as mentioned, there's a lot of softwares that were out there, all different types of specialty softwares, and new tools are just constantly being introduced. So it made us stop and think and realize, okay, we know the problems. We realize we want to build software ourselves, but before we even start to really get into that heavy ideation stage, where do we need to kind of orient ourselves, and how do we potentially solve the core needs of the users? So it made it clear for us that AII had to focus more on a human-centered design, and that needed to be at the heart of our development process. So think of it like this. Our goal is to reduce 100 million tons of carbon, and technology alone is not really a solution. It's the person using the technology that will actually make more informed decisions, learn from the tool that they have in their hands, and ultimately take action and get us closer to our shared goal, right? It's not the actual technology, it's the person that's driving it, right? No different than driving a car to your destination. That's human-centered design. It's building for the user in a way that makes their life easier and enables them to be more successful at what they're doing. I'll give you another example, and one that honestly I probably think about the most since it was brought to my attention many months ago, and while I'm working here at AII, because it's around this idea of the solution providers having completely different challenges as users. And we could go ahead and build all the latest features in software. So we could do machine learning, we could implement ChatGPT because it's the popular thing right now. But at the end of the day, if our users, such as solution providers, are located in remote areas, they don't care about AI because they're more worried about, hey, I'm going to have a power outage. Hey, my bandwidth for my Wi-Fi is actually quite slow. So if you stack this software with tons of graphics and tons of features and bells and whistles, it's going to take probably 2 minutes just to even load up, and half of it's not going to load well. So they start to care more about things like, can you autosave information that I'm putting into the platform? Is there an offline mode? Very similar to Google. You can do things offline and you don't have to be connected to the network. Now, these things are so rudimentary and have been done before. However, that's truly solving the needs of the user, and that's human-centered design. It's really about figuring out what actually will make a difference for the user versus just kind of falling into what many companies can do, which is try to ride this wave of popular features so they can get more customers. But ultimately, if we can provide quality features to users like solution providers, and the autosave is actually saving them half an hour a day of time uploading information, that's effectively going to do more damage than having machine learning at a stage that it's really not going to be effective for us.
One of the things we've been talking about is like sequencing out the needs for further development against like where we are today too, right? Like it's important that we really think through like the order and the process on which we're trying to reach newer audiences, and like as you're describing it, like what's appropriate for where we are as well too. So that being said, I kind of want to dig a little bit into like where we are with the beta and then where you're seeing we go next in terms of strategic priorities for AII. You mentioned the 100 million tons of carbon. That's the internal number we're giving ourselves by 2030. We think all the projects, programs, solutions in the CSP can be unlocking 2 billion in capital and tracking towards this 100 million minimum tons of carbon that we reduce. And that's all in this effort towards total decarbonization, where we start to demonstrate, what's ready for scale and track that carbon along the way. And I can't help think about the supplier in terms of what their needs might be for something like this. That's different than if I'm sitting in a corporate office with a high-speed Wi-Fi and I'm on my computer. You were talking about loading screens. I was like, let alone when you're on your phone trying to do this work and you're off-site remote where there's energy instability.
Naturally, this is just the beginning for us, and there's so much more that we want to do. We ideate for years out and really try to capture and collect every idea possible, no matter how small or even how stupid or crazy, because you never know when it might be relevant again. So we're constantly just drumming up new ideas, but we also want to make sure we're taking a mindful approach to the development. So at the root of everything, what we have identified is it's data, right? That's why data intake and data quality is officially the biggest thing that we have to focus on. And as we go into 2024, that is exactly what we will be focusing on. We want to build features and solutions that help streamline the collection and validation of that data. So we want to strive to become a centralized source of credible and verifiable information for the industry. But what does that look like? And I think that's the challenging part, because there's so much data out there and we could spend years aggregating it, which is why we realize that our focus really needs to be on elevating the needs of the supplier. And to put in perspective, you have, I think it's around like 96% of emissions in the apparel industry happen in the supply chain. So this is also where naturally the decarbonization activities take place. So suppliers are our users. We need to design solutions that remove barriers for those suppliers. And that's where, again, you combine human-centered design and agile development across everything with our software process. And we've already begun conducting research and interviews to learn from suppliers, and it's essentially to evolve the platform so that we're achieving that data quality and credibility, and ultimately delivering to suppliers things that effectively will make their lives easier, all for the grander picture that we will achieve these larger goals of reduction of emissions across the world and among many other sustainability goals that we have as an organization.
So suppliers are coming. You're already
Yes.
starting the research and outreach, and the human-centered design approach means suppliers are going to be a part of this next phase of where AI takes this tool. Is there anything else, I guess, do you want to say about, and it's fine if you're sort of in your strategic development right now and not ready to necessarily share, but I'm just curious, like what other areas do you think are coming sooner in the strategic pillars for this organization, but also to help the industry kind of get there faster?
If you think of data as that bedrock of a lot of our work, then really be prepared to see more of an expansion around the CSP registry and the number of programs that we have there and the type of information that can be delivered. Because again, if you think about that first problem is what programs exist, that's something that is kind of a low-hanging fruit. We can do that. We've already done it. It's out there. People can access it and see it on through apparelimpact.org and see this information. So why not start to push that further and expand that more? So that's definitely something that we'll be spending more time in. And then I think another area that we're starting to formulate a little more of a concrete strategy around to tackle in 2024 is target planning and roadmaps for suppliers and helping to deliver that for them in a way that's effective. And again, to really ease and simplify their work.
Two things. One, you're a brand retailer. This is giving you the ability to see what projects and programs are running. through AI and its network of partnerships and technical experts and on the ground third party solution providers, region by region, tier by tier. I assume as programs are rolling out, in wet processing, cut and sew, yarn prep, raw materials, like starting to see that breadth, building out that portfolio and giving that visibility. So I think the way you describe that, I think is really, really important. And then being able to run reports on like, where have I nominated facilities or am I attached to production and facilities that are actually doing this work, so I can get some data on how they're lowering their negative impacts and increasing their decarbonization progress. On the other side, what's coming, as I'm hearing you say, is this ability to then design for the user at the supplier side to be able to do the same thing. Like, what are the programs wanting in my region? Maybe some of them are being subsidized by the Fashion Climate Fund and lower my cost to start implementing them, or I can potentially nominate myself to be part of a cohort of a project for rooftop solar or, addressing thermal heat solutions or efficiency work like we're already doing with Clean by Design and others. And then the ability to capture my own data based on the various programs I might be implementing inside my facility as a supplier, right?
Yeah, that was a good summary.
Good, good. Yeah. Well, I like to kind of think, this is exciting development. When we set out at AII, we said we want to defragment the multitude of initiatives that were out there, and piece by piece, bit by bit, we're bringing them together in a much more manageable and visible way through this tool. Is there anything else that you want to say about it?
Access. I meant to mention this before. So it's live. We launched back in September, so anyone can get access to the platform just by going to apparelimpact.org and clicking on Climate Solutions Portfolio in the navigation. And you'll be able to, you don't have to register, do anything. You can see our the registry and take a look at programs and take a look at the spotlight pages and get all of the information that I was mentioning before. And then for those who are lead funder partners of ours, they have access to analytics and more robust suite of features and tools naturally. And that's through a registration process. And obviously they can reach out to us if a brand's interested, or a retailer who wants to become a lead funder can always reach out and find out more. So I think the biggest thing there was we wanted to make sure that this wasn't a fully private platform by any means. And the only reason that it's semi-private right now is because we again want to take things kind of slow and make sure that we're doing things the right way and we're building really a quality solution. But to really make the impact in the industry that we want to make around just emissions, then we need to start to open up the doors to more people and more stakeholders. So we have every intent to do that, and it's just a matter of time as we continue to build out what we need to do to get there.
And I heard a call to action in there, which is for potentially folks who want to fund this work and have a seat at the table in the development of this work, which I support. Any other calls to action that you have for the audience that might be listening to this today?
No, I think we've covered a lot, and hopefully hasn't been too much for everyone listening.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll come back in 6 months or 9 months and we'll do another update on like what's rolling out. It's exciting work. It's something that like right from the beginning, 5 years ago, we started talking about, let's get out of our spreadsheets. Let's start creating this actionable dashboard of engagement with AII that can plug into HIG and other tools that the industry is using. I mean, I can remember a really great conversation we had with our partners from Target, Gap, and PVH over at the Gap headquarters. Just I think it was 5 years ago, talking about the beginning of this concept. And this was before we launched the Fashion Climate Fund and started building out a portfolio approach. It was just, even if we only were scaling programs like Clean by Design and carbon tech assessments, we had a lot of information that was only being housed in Excel spreadsheets like the rest of the world. It's like, imagine if we could actually add intelligence to that, not only put that data in something a little bit more sophisticated, no offense, Excel, you're a great tool, but now what would it be like if we could really start to, create something usable by many, many parts of the supply chain, and access too, right? To be able to create that global access to something as a central repository or center of gravity for the work.
Slight blood pressure pump with the Excel
Yeah,
model and sheet.
exactly. We like to say,
It's a natural evil.
yeah, exactly. We wanted to supercharge it. So yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for all the work you're doing and leading us on this. I'm learning it.
Thank you for having me.
I'm learning a ton from you and the process. So thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. And we will include links and more information in the postings of the podcast as well, so folks can find their way towards more information about it, how to access, and if they're interested in being a part of it. So thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us. And, do share this podcast with others, and feel free to reach out to us at info@apparelimpact.org or on our LinkedIn. Look forward to hearing from you.